Hello, Sparkleteers. Things have been hectic. Admittedly, Liana probably wasn't expecting the situation to unfold the way it did over at Kickstarter. She probably was hoping that Steven would come in and smooth everything over and then everybody would shut up. But instead, Steven at the Saw came in and went, yeah, I did it, but I had the means and opportunity, and that makes it okay. And incidentally, I was having mental health struggles, so that's an excuse. And essentially confirmed that what I had been saying is actually true, and that his wife did not, in fact, tell the truth, and in fact denied it multiple times. So, of course, since then they spent the rest of the day fighting with the backers on Kickstarter and burning through whatever credibility they had left, it's time to pivot away and cast attention to anything: a potted plant, a dog, the human condition, anything that moves attention away from the lie and the fact that Liana covered up for her husband and that her husband admitted he moved money he wasn't authorized to move, and then fought with game backers and essentially blasted through it all. So what is Liana doing now? Well, she said a lot of things today. A lot of the things that she said today are very much professionally damaging and false, and we can prove that, and we will address that in another video, because this is the point that I need to discuss something of the utmost importance, and for that I need your full attention. I'm not going to oversell nor hyperbolize it. I am saying that this is a matter of life and death. I'm going to talk about how Liana Kerzner is contributing to the narrative that is endangering my husband. Yesterday, right before Ed the Sock's escapade, she made this very dangerous accusation talking about my husband. She says, quote, "He also claims that people have been impersonating him when contacting me, but doesn't seem terribly concerned that one of those impersonators included his full home address in a message. That makes me suspicious that it's not really an impersonator. IP addresses on the message trace back to Colorado." Okay, we're going to unpack this. To begin with, over the past 18 months, Liana has been receiving anonymous emails sent through her irresponsibly unsecure website submission form until it was taken down. She has asserted several times that we must be the sources of the messages without any form of confirmation. She also has never shared the contents of the messages with us, so it is impossible for us to be alarmed over a message we haven't seen. The only message that we were able to get are the messages that she shared on her server, and then was sent to us by a third party, and then the one that she shared on social media, the Charlie Kirk assassination reference. So, we have never been made privy to the contents of any other messages. We have actually asked multiple times on social media for her to share the messages and the metadata so that we could file a protection order against the person impersonating us, because we have a very, very strong suspicion of who it is. And Liana has categorically refused to acknowledge any of these requests. She also knows who is the likely culprit behind these anonymous messages, and I'm going to prove why I say this. In the video, Who is Harassing Liana Kerzner, that I did back in, I believe, October, I laid out the case of the man who presented himself as Mario Mattei, impersonating a famous indie movie director at the time. You can go watch the video there. Liana has, of course, mischaracterized it as a video of me saying that it's Kiwi Farm's fault for 56 minutes and then blaming her for supporting transphobia or tolerating transphobia. But then she claims that she hasn't actually watched the video, so who knows. In that video, I lay out the timeline of this individual, a local individual, and how much of a concern he is to us because he is local and obsessed with destroying and causing harm to Asher. And I can tell you why I can prove that Liana knows this. In Asher's Telegram excerpts with Liana Kerzner, he has isolated 13 different times throughout their 5-year friendship in which Asher discussed this individual with her, expressing how afraid he was of this individual and what this individual could do. You can see some examples right here. I will read a few excerpts of them. In his blog, Asher says, "I previously told her I was afraid of Louis Michael Siki, someone I knew in real life and who lived near me multiple times." Then he proceeds to enumerate and link to the times that he actually talked to Liana about this on April 21st, 2019, in 2 instances in 2020, 3 times in 2021, and then January 2nd, April 30th, July 2nd, 8 times in 2023, in April 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 19th, 24th, 28th, May 18th, and July 24th, and in 2024 on May 5th, and 4 more times in June 14th, June 14th, June 22nd, July 12th, and 13th. So, I'm going to read only a few select entries, but you can read the full exchange over at tinyurl.com/Asher@risk. So, on April 21st, 2019, Asher. Yeah, she in particular sounds like the Michael guy I've had to deal with a bit. He's a total crazy bizarre loon. I commiserate. Liana. Oh, that guy with the books? Mouse mentioned a guy who went nuts about some books. Asher. Oh, yes. Hang on, eating. Still eating, but not talking to Mouse right now, at the same time. Haha. The short story is, this guy was part of this startup horror filmmaking artist community when he showed up to try to help them, and he latched on and was seemingly enamored with us. I liked his intelligence, occasional insight, and such, but there were some oddities, like he'd go on and on, which was okay, but wow. He also liked to explain a lot of things as if he assumed I had no idea, repeatedly, but then he'd get them wrong somehow, like Plato's cave or weird acting methods. Liana. Sounds textbook sociopath. Asher. And he'd worry a lot, particularly about lots of subtext, and try to convince me or 1 or 2 people were surreptitiously trying to wrestle control of everything, everyone, or oust him or something. I just nod and try to talk him down a bit, because I just wasn't seeing some of it, but the first red flag was when he tried to push me on a private conversation I had with a girl he made uncomfortable, at one point citing some kind of really weird test of friendship without quite making a big deal of it. Liana. That's common. It's hard to tell if someone is just full of shit and insecure, or they're a sociopath. Asher. I didn't cave. I just said, I can say she's not accusing you of anything, and he finally dropped it. He left the group angry, but contacted me and said that, hey, why don't we do some talking and perhaps some creative thinking. He started to push for some random weirdo Facebook account that was allegedly his PA to get made admin of the group. I finally said, why do you want that? And he exploded and got nasty about people in the group, hinging mostly on what they were recovering addicts. Liana. Holy shit, really? Asher. I immediately didn't like that, and began the process of slowly, he had my books, of saying goodbye and cutting ties. He harassed the Gorehound, the store, twice more on Facebook under idiot accounts. I ran a background check on him, I do that for my mom too, and we found some odd stuff. At one point he was in a court for something to do with the Patriot Act. Mouse and I had a big pile of nope and immediately started calling and texting him and all the numbers we could find for our books back. He freaked out, understandably, and a super bizarre text combo where we literally pretty much only asked for our books, little else, just our books, and he melted down with all sorts of cuckoo high super huge texts and lots of bullshit about us. He refused to return them anywhere but the police station where he'd make a report. So, we cataloged and printed all the pertinent texts and everything else, and we headed him off the next morning at said station, filing an immediate report with evidence. Then he disappeared. Books showed up, we got him, so that's that. And then I have that run-in with Ayn Rand International, and Ayn Fand shows up with this. Classic Michael. He's not even a member of that group. He's triangulating with himself. Liana. That's him talking about himself. Schooley does the same thing. Asher. LOL, well, I don't believe he's gay and he's allegedly married, acts like a total sleaze sexually, and collects his rent from 8 properties around town, but in spirit and in general, yeah, every time he accuses me of being a total sociopath, he's definitely talking about himself. Who's Schooley? I'm asleep though. Good night. Liana. Schooley is the stalker chick. Emily Schooley. In 2021, Asher mentioned Michael 3 times. This is one of the instances. I used to be a lot more high-wired, more prone to borderline dysphoric outbursts and breakdowns and get into odd relationships with people sometimes. I've gotten better about all those things with time, age, and experience, but there's a reason I got banned from the CU campus. Actually, not much. I actually worry more about something happening to me at the hands of someone like Michael, such as getting jailed for a crime I didn't commit. Liana, really? You really think they could do something like that? Sounds like in the past life it wasn't very fair to you. Asher. I think it's because we watch a lot of true crime stories. Liana, funny. The shows that freak me out are the ones about killer black mold and stuff. And, further on, Asher. That's scary to me. One of my biggest fears is that I'll be falsely accused of a crime because of my background and disability. I'm considered at risk in legal cases. At least that's what the hospital told me. Liana, the same way I'm on the internet and was on TV, so it's easy to label me a narcissist. Asher, I like the police officer though, and I was right about getting there first. He actually was going to knock on his door, the guy who claimed he'd have the police explain how things work to us, and ask for the books himself, but they showed up before he could do that. Wish he did. Liana, yeah, that was good for the cop. Asher, it's amazing to me sometimes these fully adult people trying to be as manipulative as possible and not being very good at it or opaque about it, like Michael. Liana, in a separate encounter, I have the text of the files I submitted to the cops. There weren't any emails. Steven sent her one, but after that point, text messages were the only communication. Asher, that's good. Here's Michael in his own words. So Liana is aware of this. It's a total of 19 discussions and 30 plus mentions in regards to Michael over the course of 5 years. Liana cannot in good conscience actually say that she disbelieves that Asher is being impersonated, and trying to cast doubt because the impersonating messages had IP addresses that trace back to Colorado. She knows that for the last 5 years, she has been aware of the existence of a local man who lives in our same town with a penchant for impersonating people. And you can see the full story in the video, Who is Harassing Liana Kerzner. Liana cannot under any circumstance say that she doesn't know about this individual, as Asher has spoken about him to her in great detail, even when we were in Arkansas. Knowing that, Liana still asserted that the anonymous messages that were impersonating Asher, that did not come from Asher's official email address, were made by him, and she used those emails to paint an image of Asher as an unhinged and dangerous individual obsessed with harming her. It is the height of irresponsibility, especially knowing what I have demonstrated that she knows. In September of 2025, Liana posted a death threat that she had received, alluding to the recent Charlie Kirk assassination, which she then tried to tie to us. Using this as an excuse, she sent letters from her lawyer, Dr. Mark Burry, which we didn't see right away. We reacted publicly to Liana insinuating that Asher had sent the death threats. She relayed to her Discord that Asher was behind the death threats and that we were really reacting to being held responsible by the lawyer's letters. We didn't actually see the letters in our inbox until significantly later. She continued to perpetuate the dangerous narrative that Asher was sending her anonymous messages until she finally closed her anonymous submission form. And as of recent, the situation has escalated even further. Before the weekend, I received a call from the local police department because someone who was, quote, concerned over Asher's posts on social media, where he said that he hadn't slept in 24 hours, which incidentally I suppose that was many days old at that point. The officer was concerned, and he also was a little bit puzzled as to why we were worried that someone was calling a welfare check on Asher. Because clearly that showed concern, right? Well, the call had been anonymous. Here's the thing. We may not go out as often as we'd like nowadays because we get caught up into doing our projects. I compose a lot of music. Asher works in programming. We do go out and meet with friends and loved ones. Every single friend, of which we have several along the Front Range, would not hesitate to talk to us directly if they thought Asher was not doing well. In fact, several of our dear friends have come to aid when Asher was in crises. And in those situations, no cops were ever involved. So this is extremely irregular and extremely strange. And I'm going to tell you now that this is dangerous because you see, all that it takes for someone with a spoiled identity, such as a mentally ill individual who lives with the stigma of, say, a personality disorder, is to fall into dangerous territory by a paper trail of people calling the police concerned over the troubling things that he's saying on social media, even if they're innocuous, such as the fact that he didn't sleep for 24 hours and that the apartment was messy. Yeah, Asher had insomnia one night, and the apartment can be messy. Is your apartment messy? Those were two tweets that this individual selected to be concerned about in their call, but nevertheless, now there is a paper trail. Let me explain why this is a danger. Because we are accustomed to the cinematic portrayal of stalkers. When people think a stalker is dangerous, they immediately think, well, they're hiding somewhere with a knife and ready to kill you. While this is true in some cases, reality is often a lot more nuanced and there's a lot more manipulation in the works. For example, the cumulative effect of false reports on a neurodivergent individual who suffers from the stigma of a personality disorder can be catastrophic. As I have already said, there is a paperwork of people calling in with, quote, concerns about Asher's mental well-being. We can couple that with Liana Kerzner insinuating that Asher is the source of the obsessed messages she kept getting and the death threats. You're starting to see how the dossier gets built? From then on, it's just a few more steps to add more paperwork, more suspicion, and suddenly the police is knocking at the door with concerns. Since individuals suffering with stigma often tend to be disbelieved by the authorities, things start becoming very precarious. The Innocence Project shows several studies. Study after study shows that police constantly misinterpret and misread the symptomology of individuals with personality disorders and other neurodivergent conditions as culpability. Unsurprisingly, the majority of the police force and detectives included are not equipped and not trained to read and deal with individuals who are on the spectrum or neurodivergent. There are many ways in which a stalker can put an individual at risk, especially if they are neurodivergent. Using the bias of institutionalized force is one of them. Liana Kerzner's dangerous narrative is contributing towards the possibility of a dossier being built against Asher based on falsehoods, but nevertheless leveraged with stigma that can put his life, liberty, and well-being at risk. These are not idle worries. This sort of thing, suspicion leveraged with stigma and prejudice, is leveraged against neurodivergent individuals very frequently. In fact, something like this happened to Asher when he was a teenager. When he went to college, his wealthy roommate essentially worked to get him expelled from the university because Asher had discovered that he was selling pot out of the dorm room and he was afraid that Asher was going to get him in trouble. The roommate leveraged mental health stigma and, claiming that he was afraid for his own safety, got Asher removed. He was also, incidentally, the son of a wealthy donor to the university. But that is an example of what can happen. His roommate was never in danger. Nevertheless, crazy man bad is definitely one of the things that is leveraged against people with stigma. Therefore, Liana Kerzner must retract the accusations she has made and admit that she does not in fact know that these messages came from Asher and that it is irresponsible and endangering to claim that they are. She also must make a full public admission that she knows of this other individual because Asher spoke to her more than 14, 15, 19 times throughout their 5-year friendship, as is evidenced by the transcripts, and that therefore there is a much more likely candidate than Asher for those messages. I want you to understand that these are not idle worries because you can find cases all over the internet and the world of mentally ill individuals who have been railroaded by stigma wielders into legal trouble with the police over trumped-up accusations because they're not believed, because once again, they are mentally ill. And this is the situation that Liana Kerzner is feeding into. She knows that there is a local man who impersonates people, who hates Asher, and who is constantly trying to get Asher into trouble. Liana cannot deny that because the record shows she knows of this individual. Her floating these doubts is disingenuous, irresponsible, and dangerous. And at this point, it looks like she is endangering the life and well-being of a mentally ill, at-risk individual because that individual is inconvenient. The video who is harassing Liana Kerzner contains all of the information, including the fact that this individual has our address. So she shouldn't claim that we aren't surprised about it. We announced it as far back as October. Not only that, but we believe that an account that was most likely his doxed us on Kiwi Farms. And that was something I mentioned in the video as well. So, she's acting to endanger Asher when she expresses this incredulous, "I'm not sure if I believe that," because she has this information. She's had it for years. Now, I know that I don't actually make a lot of calls to action. I prefer the evidence to speak for itself. And it does. But in cases like this, where someone's life is in danger, I am asking you to publicize this information everywhere you can. Everywhere you can post it, because my husband's life is at risk, and documentation of this needs to be out there to establish the record of what is going on. And I encourage you to inform Liana Kerzner that people know now that this is what she's doing. She has also performed professional defamation, and I'll get into that in the next video, or the video after that, because there's still that gaslighting video coming out. But this video is the most important right now, because it deals with my husband's endangerment. This individual reared his head again when Liana made that mess of a cancellation announcement, and he has been rolling on since in the drama wake of the lies that Liana has been telling, because she has been demonizing my husband to make herself look good in this. He showed up in her YouTube comments immediately. We identified him and the comments went away, but he did not. And you can see that saga in the video. By continuing this charade, Liana is creating a narrative that puts Asher in a position of being endangered, in the vicinity of someone who endangers people, as you saw in the case of his stepson, which I discussed in the video. Not only that, this particular individual also has been banned from ever providing care to patients again because he was charged with patient abuse. This is someone who hates the mentally ill. So I'm asking you, if you care about neurodivergent individuals, if you want to put a stop to bullying, to mental health stigma, and to the mechanics that make this happen and perpetuate this, spread this information. And make sure that Liana Kerzner is aware that you know that this is happening. We have had to engage the services of professionals willing to provide protection and vigilance due to this situation. A situation that would not have escalated to this point without Liana's contributions and without all of the lies that she has told. Yesterday proved to the extent to which she will lie, to the point of denying something that even her husband accidentally revealed. Liana Kerzner knows this local man exists, and yet she feigns complete ignorance to you so that Asher can be cast as the likely culprit. Think about that. I will see you tomorrow.